Hi, my name is Kim Thompson, and today I would like to talk to you about overcoming adversity in the workplace. According to the Workplace Bullying Institute, and yes, it is a real place, 60.3 million U.S. workers were affected by bullying in the workplace. And out of those 60.3 million individuals, 65% were women and 35% were men, which is a very clear indication that bullying in the workplace can affect any gender. Unfortunately, if it goes unresolved, it can lead to a hostile or toxic work environment. That can be costly to both the employee as well as to the organization because it does create a very low morale, and in turn, low morale equals lower productivity. Bullying in the workplace means harassing, offending, socially excluding, or negatively affecting someone's ability to perform their work. Some examples of workplace bullying are name calling, intimidation, or setting someone up for failure. The side effects of being bullied: the individual becoming withdrawn and disengaged from their work, becoming overly stressed out, and having panic or anxiety attacks will negatively impact not only the individual, but also their quality of work. And these are things that we really want to consider as we look at why bullying in the workplace is really something that needs to be addressed as well as effectively combated. Some of the negative impact that workplace bullying has on the organization itself. Some of those are increased costs due to employee turnover, because studies would show that an employee who does not feel supported or becomes disgruntled has a higher probability of quitting. Additionally, absenteeism is losing productivity time because the man hours aren't being made, and the probability for meeting the goal for the day, especially if you're in a metrics driven organization, becomes slim. Another thing that you want to take into consideration with absenteeism is the fact that now you as an organization, you find yourself having to fill in those man hours. And so that could potentially lead to driving another employee who's willing to cover that individual shift into overtime. So now you're looking at increased expenses with overtime. And so, as we all know, according to the profit and loss statement, the biggest manageable expense is going to be the employee work hours. And so it really does have a negative effect financially on the organization if workplace bullying continues. I want to consider is the fact that now HR has to step in, especially if these cases escalate. Unfortunately, in organizations, and I can tell you from experience that when an individual or individuals become so disgruntled, it really can have two negative effects. They can either become more agitated and more aggressive, or they can become more regressive. And that was one of the things that I know we talked about a little bit, is how the employee can now disengage. But on the flip side, if you get someone that really feels pressured to have to stand up for themselves because they don't feel that they're getting the support from the organization, the chances of that person becoming more aggressive can also happen, which then can turn into a volatile situation where that individual feels that they need to take matters in their own hands. For this segment, I'd like to speak directly to those that have found themselves or currently find themselves the target of a workplace bully. First and foremost, I want to tell you I completely empathize with you. And I also would like to encourage you to keep your head up and let you know that this too shall pass. And you have the opportunity to overcome and come out on top. I would also like to share a story with you, more like a triumphant tale, if you will, of an individual that overcame workplace adversity. So we're going to jump right into our story about a man named Daniel, who was one of 3 department managers who had 120 employees working for him. Now, Daniel is noted for operating in a spirit of excellence. So he quickly became distinguished with the owner of the company named Darius, that Darius considered promoting Daniel to become the CEO of the entire operation. So immediately, Daniel's colleagues and all of his employees became jealous and attempted to discredit Daniel in order to keep him from being promoted. However, they couldn't find any fault with him. So they continued to conspire against Daniel, and they worked together to come up with a plan to set Daniel up for failure by presenting an idea to the owner, Darius, to change the company policy for 31 days to prevent anyone from praying in the workplace. Now, they were able to convince Darius because they made their case look so good, and Darius ended up changing the policy. And also, they instituted a clause that said that if anyone broke the policy, that they would be subject to serious consequences and repercussions. So at the end of the workday, Daniel went home that evening, and after work he began to thank God. And you think about it, you get home from a very long work day, and the first thing you want to do is just thank God that you've made it through your work day. And so as he decided to thank God for making it through that work day, which was customary for him to pray and give thanks, because he had been doing this since he was a young boy. So it wasn't that this was something that he did intentionally to just rebel against what the new workplace policy had been, but consider this idea. Daniel wasn't in the workplace. He went home and he was praying. And what happened was some of his colleagues or employees, the story really doesn't say who, but they were listening outside of his window as he was praying. So they went to work the next day and reported Daniel to Darius and insisted that Darius uphold the consequences of breaking the new policy. So when they told him that it was Daniel that broke the rule, Darius, who really favored Daniel at the time, really became upset with himself. And he ended up really lamenting at the fact that he even agreed to change the policy, that the entire workday he was trying to figure out how he was going to be able to help Daniel. When they changed the policy, they signed it into law, which now insisted that Darius had to follow through on the consequences as a result to Daniel going against the company policy. Darius had to be a man of integrity to make sure that he was leading by example. So reluctantly, Darius called for Daniel to be put into the lion's den. And Darius was distraught by having to make this decision, that when he went home that evening, he couldn't eat, he couldn't sleep. So when Darius went to go check on Daniel the next day, to check on his well-being, wanting to see if Daniel had made it through the night after being in a den of lions. And I think it's very noteworthy to mention that he cried out to Daniel with a lamenting voice, simply because, as we discussed earlier, he really didn't want to put Daniel in the den to begin with because he favored him so much. So it also is noted in the story that when Daniel answered him back, how he became overjoyed, and it was almost like a relief that Daniel had made it through the night. And one of the things that I think that really needs to be mentioned is the fact that even when Daniel replied back to Darius, he did so in a respectful manner, and he even still began to acknowledge and respect the leader in Darius, and he did not become combative or, want to then, try to take out any anger or frustration out on Darius for having to make this decision. And when Darius asked him, was he okay? Daniel proceeded to tell him that he was okay and that God had sent an angel to shut the mouth of the lions to prevent the lions from hurting him. It's very important to note that Darius himself had a change of heart, and he began to acknowledge God as the one and only true living God. And as a result to that, Darius then changed the policy because it was so noteworthy that the God that Daniel served, which is the one and only true living God, was able to perform a miracle, and he acknowledged it as a miracle. And as a result to that, the entire culture of the workplace itself ended up shifting, and it became a positive and enjoyable workplace where Daniel was able to thrive and was promoted. So some of the things that I would like to point out about Daniel's character and the things that he did that set him apart from others and set him on the path to success were, one, he worked with a spirit of excellence, and he also worked as unto the glory of God. Two, he maintained his professionalism, and he didn't lash out at the other colleagues or his employees even after they set him up. Three, he continued to honor his leader, Darius, and he didn't complain or even change his countenance towards Darius, nor did he disrespect him even after being put into the lion's den. He maintained such an upright attitude and character that it is just, it's phenomenal. And it really speaks volumes to how and why, so to speak, he was favored by God as well as by Darius. That it's very important to mention that the moral of this story is that when you choose to do what's right in the sight of the Lord, even in the face of adversity, which can be a difficult thing to do. However, Daniel shows us an example that it can be done. And it's very critical for me to mention that when you do choose to do the right thing in the sight of the Lord, God is still faithful to protect you, to promote you, and to prosper you. So I know that it takes courage and faith to stand in the face of adversity. I can tell you from some of my own experiences that I can draw from. However, I think Daniel's example really proves to be one where he literally chose to be the bigger person, and it worked out in his favor. I also would like to close with saying that I know if you're experiencing adversity in the workplace, especially if you are the target of being bullied, I want you to remember that obstacles are opportunities to overcome. So what I would do is leave you with this, that in the face of adversity, where the environment has now escalated to an environment of hostility, the best thing to do is be a Daniel. And I just want to encourage you, when you have a choice to make as to whether to fight back or take matters into your own hands, I would highly recommend that you choose to be a Daniel. So I hope this story encourages you, motivates you, and most importantly, blesses you.